Morning, I forgot to start it. The unit we're doing this afternoon is CPP BDN 4007. Store and Retrieve, that's the proper name for this one. Store and Retrieve Building Design Documentation. I think you guys are becoming more and more aware of how important this function of being a draft person is becoming. Can you see over very few units that we've just touched on at the start of the year, the minute we start putting drawing documentation together, we start generating files at quite an accelerated speed, and before we know it, we have a lot of files. If you don't know where to put them, you won't know where to get them from. So having a really good filing system is absolutely crucial to the function of a draft person. And funnily enough, in most offices, the management, the architects, they're not concerned with this. This is absolutely the function of the draft person, to know where the drawings are, what versions you've got, and, you know, all you're going to get is an email from your boss to say, can you send me the drawings by 4 o'clock?
So you're like a gopher.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You are not only the draft person, but you're also the secretary of the drafting documentation as well, if you want to refer to it as such. But absolutely, this is part of the job to know where the files are. It's not good enough to just be able to open AutoCAD and draw. You have to be able to manage all the documentation too. So that's what this unit is all about. I'm going to give you a little heads up on this unit right off the offset. You've got your student assessment guide, and I will happily give you some time now to print off your student assessment guide, or if you want, just to open it in Word. Reason being, if we look at assessment, there's 3 assessment tasks. Assessment task 1 is for the part-timers. A little tip for part-timers, assessment tasks 2 and 3 are quite similar, so you might want to have a look at them as well. And basically, all 3 assessment tasks are a list of questions and answers, okay? That's all the assessment tasks are for this. You're not producing any drawings or anything like that. There's a couple of exercises we'll be doing, but the assessment tasks are questions and answers. If I were a student in this unit, I would have that Word document open beside me on my other screen, and I would be writing little answers and notes to myself in there as we go through. And that way, you're more or less completing your assessment tasks as we work through the unit. Okay? So it's a Word document. The other thing you can, of course, do with the Word document, I enable editing, I'll be able to do it. So there's not a whole lot of room just to save on when we print copies of these, but obviously, because it's a Word document, you can make as much room as you like. If you want to go through and do something like that and leave room for yourself to make some notes in there on the documents themselves, then that's going to help you a lot when you go to make your submission. It's in the OneDrive. How did I do that? I just put my cursor there and press return. You can make some room for yourself and print it off like that if you want. So you've got a little space to write notes as we go through. So I'll give you a few minutes there to have a look at what's in the OneDrive and edit, download, whatever you want to do with it. You can just keep it open digitally if you feel that way inclined. The sign-on sheet for this unit gone around. You do have to sign on twice today because they're 2 different units. Whose desk did I leave it on? Oh, Adrian. Yeah, coming around. There's a lot of questions. Yeah, there's a lot of questions. But you know, if you're making notes as we go through on that document, it's really going to assist you in just putting your assessment together rather quickly at the end. This isn't a huge unit. There's a lot of information, a lot of things to you know, take note of, and it will help you in your working life, but it's not a massive unit, you'll be happy to know. I'm going to go and grab my folder. I'll be back in one moment. Let you print and get yourselves organised. Resume. Okay. So, it's not going to be that easy. I'm just going to stand here and read out the answers. Let you type. No, we're going to relax a little bit this afternoon. And I really just want to get you guys familiar with the typical office setup, the workplace scenario that you will most likely go into after this. And really, I suppose that's what this unit is all about. You know, what's your day-to-day roles and what will you be tasked with? So I suppose the best place to start is at the very beginning of a project. You know, either your boss comes to you and says, oh, you know, we've had a phone call and, you know, Mr. Flogs decides he wants a new house and he's got a lot number and that's about all he's got for you. What's the very first thing you would do in response to that? What would you think? What would you be thinking about in an office situation? You've got a call, you've got a client, there's a new job on. Set up a folder, absolutely, yeah, you certainly want your folder structure. Yeah, and that's absolutely the most crucial thing to do in the beginning. But also, I think we've spoken briefly about this before, you need to get a contract in place, okay? So a lot of people, and we're all very enthusiastic people, you know, we new job and, you know, you're on the phone to the client and suddenly, you know, you tell them like, oh, you know, you're in zone single dwelling and your setback is 1.5 meters and you're getting into all the technical stuff straight away. Well, try to resist doing that. You've got lots of advice to give, but your advice is valuable, and you need to, clients are generally really enthusiastic when they ring up as well, and they usually ring up with 20 questions, but all of which they want the answer to on the phone that day. Please don't resist answering all those questions too. The first thing you need to do is set up a job, okay? It's a new job, and obviously our advice is valuable, and your company's advice is valuable, and you want to be paid for it. So that is very, very crucial in those first few minutes of that phone call. Of course, you don't want to be off-putting to your client, but quite regularly clients are ringing up and they're ringing around for prices and quotes. They're not really giving you the job straight away, and the only way to know that you have the job is to have a contract with them. So that is absolutely first and foremost the first thing you need to do. But establish a contract. So there is a form, a standard form, and I've given it to you on the OneDrive, but we'll have a look at it here now. This is a very standard form that is produced by the Building Designers Professional Practice Program, Building Designers Association. This is a very generic form. I'm not a huge fan of this form, but it does give us lots of headings that we can discuss this afternoon and look at what all these different parts of a job are. So the first thing we look at is the very first part there is the contract of engagement. So the contract with your client is often referred to as contract of appointment, contract of engagement, you know, letter of engagement, letter of appointment. There's lots of different titles for what this is, but basically what it is a document, can be in the form of a letter, that says, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z for the amount of, in dollar figures, and that is the parameters of what we've agreed that I'm going to service that I'm going to provide for you. A few of you have made comments to me over the last few weeks about, sorry? All right. Popped off on me. No, it just seems to jump. No, I'm still recording, but thank you for that. His phone's gone off. Where was I?
Some of us were talking about something in the past week.
We asked many people.
Oh yeah, a lot of people had said to me over the last while is like, you know, gosh, you know, I didn't realize there was so much involved in drafting, you know, and actually that's a theme that you will have to, you know, battle against a little bit through your career, because people do think that, you know, it took you half an hour to put those lines on that piece of paper and hand it to them. And it's a lot more involved in that, and I think you're all becoming very aware that there's a lot more involved in that. There's a lot of research that goes on in the background. There's a lot of checking against regulations and planning guidelines. There's a lot of popping out to sites and measuring up and getting your background information correct, you know. So, sorry?
I'll just stack something like a third of the work and 20% of the cost, or the other way around.
How do you mean?
I read it somewhere that for the entire build of a house, it's a third of the time from the contract to engagement
Yeah.
to the last nail being hit in or whatever. The design phase, a third of the time,
Right.
20% of the
And 20% of the cost is a good guideline, yes. We talk about 20% of costs being design costs. Now that's not all you drawing, that's maybe, you know, the structural engineer doing his bit, the building certifier doing his bit, you know, probably making a planning application somewhere along the way. But yeah, 20% of overall construction cost is a good guideline for design.
That's geotechnical everything.
And that's everything. That's all those design team people. Yeah, absolutely. But you'll find that the general, you know, mum and dad coming to you for some drafting, they're obviously wanting to get it as cheap as possible. They'd quite like you to draw them the house for a couple of $100s. And, you know, they're quite happy to give the builder $300,000 to build the house, but they want to give you $300 to draw it. You know, that's quite normal. Unfortunately, that's what we face. And I suppose it's really important for you to present yourself very professionally and very calmly and, you know, to explain to the client exactly what's involved in this and to put value on your work. You know. Yeah, 2 slabs of beer, I'll draw your plans, you know. It's not quite like that. So contracts are really important, and just, you know, having value on your work is important as well. And being able to explain to the client the ins and outs. It's okay for you to, in that initial conversation, to explain to the client the extent of what might need to happen, you know. Don't underestimate the amount of work that might be involved. So the contract of engagement is that very first part, and basically there's a contract form here. And all it's really saying is you, the designer, your address, your ABN number. We don't have any license numbers here in the Northern Territory, but in other states, like Queensland there, for instance, they certainly do have a license number for building designers. And then, of course, you want the client. I have to say, one of the most important pieces of information here is to get the client's name and address. That might sound really obvious. Do you know how many jobs go on that have just got lot numbers attached to them? And when the end of the month comes and the admin staff of your company want to send the invoice, nobody knows the client's name or address. They just know all about, but they can tell you everything about the site. They can tell you, you know, what levels are on the site, but they can't tell you where to send the bill. So please, again, this is an important step, is to get that information up front from the client. You shouldn't open a job number without it. And so the scope of work. So this, as I said, this document can be in the form of a letter, and it's just a brief description of what the scope of work is. Okay, so you know, new 3-bedroom blockwork ground level dwelling. You know, it doesn't need to be very detailed description of the scope of work, but something that's, you know, in there. It's not just a job. We don't have a clue where it's going, or extension to existing dwelling. Contract period. So, you know, don't really get into this. Sometimes you will have a deadline that you're working to. The different stages, of course, are like sort of design development, or concept design, it's also known as. So just doing the initial concept drawings of, you know, the proposal back to the client of what that might be. Then you've got planning. So applying for a planning application, there's another set of drawings. So it's like the same set are just being worked up through the different stages. And then you would have contract drawings, or construction drawings, more commonly known as working drawings, or the other name for that. So that's the stage when you've the concept, where we're going with that design set of drawings is signed off by the client. You've got your planning application, you've got that through, you know there's not going to be any changes through planning, and now you're going to do a full set of working drawings. So full set of working drawings means, remember we did all that research into the NCC regulations, So making sure all of the information of how that building is now compliant with the National Construction Code is in that working set of drawings. Who needs the working set of drawings? Or what do you need them for?
Builders?
Builders, yeah, the builder certainly needs all the information on there to know exactly what it is he's building. So it's very detailed, lots of dimensioning on the building working drawings. But who else needs it? What can you not do without them? The engineers will need them to work up their own set of construction drawings. Yep, yep. Yeah, all the subbies, but we kind of call them the builder because they work underneath the builder. But there's one other key person in the design team. You can't build anything without him.
Certifier?
The building certifier. So the working drawings, that set of construction documentation, is the set that you send to the building certifier, and he stamps that set of drawings. Because he's stamping that set of drawings to say, these drawings are in compliance with the National Construction Code. That's his only job. Is this building compliant with the National Construction Code? And so he needs a set of drawings to show him that the design is compliant with the National Construction Code. And then he's going to bring them to the builder. You're going to get the job built on site, physically building it. And at the end of that build period, the building certifier is going to issue an occupancy permit. And so he's going to go out on site and inspect to see, is the building built in accordance with that set of working drawings. Sometimes there's changes on site. Sometimes you have to make changes to the working drawings at the end of construction. What would that set of drawings be called? You did some this week. As constructed. Remember those ones? So as constructed or as built drawings, they're also known. Yeah. So there's a couple of different, the stages of the project. Now, I just laugh out loud when I see the number of weeks being put against it, because how do you really know how long that's all going to take? Now, you can, a lot of projects do put numbers of weeks on it, but to be fair, your planning could take you 5 weeks longer than you thought it was going to, because you ran into some issue that you had to discuss with the planner, and there's often little hiccups along the way. But the design process takes quite a lengthy period of time, and of course the more complex the building, the more complex that process is. So it's a little bit more than just, can you draw me a house? Yeah? And certainly a lot more than just a floor plan and the layout of the house, because a lot of people think that's what it is. Can you draw me some plans? So they literally call them the plans. They're not plans, they're plans and elevations and sections and site drawings, and there's a whole set of documentation. And when we talk about the documentation set, that's what we mean, that whole set that will explain it. Bridget?
So when the client, rings me up and says, they obviously want to know the price and everything, but you really cannot put a price on it.
Not until you know the scope of work. So how much do they want you, how much detail do they want you to go to?
But then basically you say, okay, it's roughly, how do you come up with a price, basically? That's
really difficult.
So it's really,
yeah,
you can't really.
It's really difficult. So some people charge by the hour.
Okay.
And they'll charge an hourly rate for putting the documents together. I don't really encourage that when you're just starting off, because as a draft person, you're probably slower than an experienced draft person, and your price will go through the roof. Some offices do it by putting a dollar figure on every sheet, every page of a drawing, which is probably a nice guideline to do. Or some people will use and I wouldn't go as far as 20%, but if you were just doing the drafting on a house, you could say, look, I'm going to come in around 7 or 8% of the cost of construction. So if you think, just the drafting, So drafting and design, and to bring the project, it's almost project management. It's called client-based project management. Okay, so when people talk about, I'm a project manager in construction, immediately we think, they're on a building site, telling the builder what to do. But there's also project management of the documentation of the design phase of a project, and we call that generally client-based project management. So in other words, you're representing the client through that whole period of the design. You're the person who's going to guide them and be their advisor through the whole thing.
This thing usually tear the hair out, and they usually consummate profession.
Who's that?
The project manager.
Project managers. I've been a
Yeah.
project manager for quite a while. Project managers,
Teams and client.
you deal with, you're the go-between. You're the person dealing with the client, and you're dealing with all the other sub-consultants as well, and all the engineers, and you're just coordinating that whole process. And I have to say, it's probably one of the, it is a tear your hair out kind of job, and there's always pressure, and there's always deadlines, and everybody wants everything done last week, and there's never, and you sort of reprieve, and you quite regularly have 12 projects at the same time, you know, that's quite normal, you know, you would never really just have one.
Do you get confused between the projects?
No, I don't think so. Not between projects,
Is there
no.
something in your mind?
Yeah, the job number usually.
Okay.
How many job numbers can I remember off by heart at one time? That's generally it, yeah. And you talk about your jobs as in the job number. And we'll come to that in a minute, but that's how vitally important, and I've been, you know, I think we've been actually practicing a lot of what's in this unit already, because I'm really, can't stress to you enough how important it is. Those job numbers are so important. And when you have a number of jobs on the go at the same time, your filing and your job number and where the information is being stored is really, really important, because you can't remember it all in your head. And don't even try, because what happens if you try and remember it in your head is the figure you're remembering for one job gets confused with the figure for another job, and, you know, you've just mixed everything up. So write it down, file it, put it on a drawing. That's where it should be.
But, so this all comes once the client has accepted the quote, is that right?
Yeah, so the first thing to do would be get that initial client brief, and we kind of looked at that in 4001, you know, where the client rings up, and you do need to get, have a conversation with them about what is the scope of the work here, what is it that you're asking me to do, and quite often the client doesn't really know. I can tell you now, most clients don't even know about this process at all. They're completely unaware of it, and it's really up to you to be able to explain the process to them, because, you know, that's what they're paying you to do, to be the professional, to give them that professional advice. But again, we're kind of entering into project management here, but I do think, you know, our title is often draft person. It's just such a, you know, a title that isn't nearly enough to describe the role you do, because you really do the job of a project manager, and you really do the job of building designer as well in all of that. You're making lots of design decisions along the way. So it's an interesting time in the project. So absolutely, with more experience comes a better ability, I suppose, to be able to judge what the project will be. Also in this, you can also say, for instance, a lot of projects might come in and you're really kind of not sure where it's going to go. On the commercial projects, this is often the case. First of all, the client usually has a budget in mind, and they don't know what they're going to be able to get for that budget. So the way we usually start off with that is we just start doing up some schematic drawings of what they would like to achieve, and then very early on we might get a QS, a quantity surveyor on board, to start looking at costs, and, you know, we can sort of bring the design back a bit if it's looking like it's going to be over budget. We can use the square meter rate to just give us initial assessments at the beginning of a project of what something might cost. But again, that's outside of the scope of being a draft person. That's definitely in the arena of being a quantity surveyor. But
I want a house that costs $350,000.
Yeah. So if we kind of think on that scale, this is why a lot of people will go to a house builder, because they have built this same house so many times, they know exactly what it costs, and they can, you know, give people a figure very quickly for, you know, a particular house type that's going to cost you, you know, $299,000. That one's going to cost you $320,000. It's kind of like going shopping in the supermarket. You can see all the prices. But when you're going to design something from scratch, that's much more complex than that. It depends what materials you use, depends what finishes you want to achieve, and all of those different things. But in terms of concept design, we usually work just off a square meter rate. How many square meters can I make this for, you know, X amount? But the square meter rate changes with the economy as well. I would have been working here When I first came to Darwin, I couldn't believe the cost of construction. Like, I actually thought I was getting my figures wrong all the time. It was so high. But I learned over the years that it actually does cost that much. So for commercial buildings, I usually work at about $3,000 a square metre, which is quite high. Your house builders, who bulk buy materials and build the same house type over and over again, which really reduces their overhead costs and their design costs, because obviously they've just got that one or three house types that they repeat over and over again. So they're taking their 20% off nearly straight away. You know, they've taken that back down to about 5% of the cost because they're repeating the same design over and over again. So they're working at the moment, I believe it's down to about 1,300 a square metre for residential. It's the cheapest it's been in a while. Sorry?
Like high, I kind of looked into it for a little bit, and it said like the build high end is about 2,700.
Yeah.
And you double it when you go a level up. Is that right?
Yes. Going up a story definitely adds a huge extra cost. Although I don't usually take that into consideration when I'm doing my figures.
You don't?
Yeah. I just work off the square metre rate.
Right.
Just square metre per
Yeah.
level.
No, just square metre. Just square metre.
Ground level.
I would probably, if I thought it was going to be two-story, I would probably go 1,500 per square metre as opposed to 1,300,
Right.
and just allow for it like that. Yeah. But there's all different ways of doing it, and I'm certainly not an expert on costing construction. But these are very general type figures that we're throwing around here. So these are the stages that you might put in here. So you would ask the client, very quickly you can make an assumption like, do we need a planning application or don't we? Because there's a whole process you have to manage and a whole set of drawings you have to come up with. You have to write a report, like a statement of effect in response to the planning scheme. You have to manage the application with the planning authority. You might have to go to a development consent authority meeting and represent your client at that. So that's a whole, workload in itself. Do they want are they just hiring you to get some concept design drawings, or are they hiring you to do a whole set of working drawings? There's a huge difference in those two things. Absolutely massive difference in those two things. So you might want to write those in there on what the contract period is here. So then, the scope of work, and then like the different stages, starts getting a bit of detail. The payment, of course, what are you charging? You can split that into different stages if you want, or you can say a fee calculated on an hourly rate for all the work. And then sometimes in a design office, different personnel in the design office get charged out at different rates. So the director of the company is probably getting charged out at like $300 an hour, and the associate directors are probably 220 and so forth. The draft people often get charged out at about $80, $90, $100 an hour. They're probably getting paid $40, but the company is taking the difference.
Yeah, they're like $25 an hour.
When I first started as a cadet, I was getting paid like $12 an hour.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Oh my gosh, I do remember when I worked in Sydney when I first came here first, and I think I was getting $19 an hour, and I was so horrified, and I couldn't live in Sydney on it, and I had to move out. But I think that's because I think the company were actually paying something like $27, $28 an hour for me, but it was through an agency, so they were taking the other piece, and I was getting. They were making a fortune off me, and I couldn't even pay my rent. So yeah.
They start from about $40.
About 40.
Even basic admin people get like $30 an hour.
Yeah. Why would you become a draft person to do what you can get? Yeah.
That's what I was like.
Well, it's qualified for, and it is a responsible job. Like, we've a lot to think about in our day. So yeah, you do want to be getting a little bit more, and of course, with experience, and as you move through your, couple of years experience behind your belt, that hourly rate should continue to rise. And it is one of those jobs where, the more experienced you become, and then you move into project management, and move into different maybe CAD management or BIM management that we spoke about this morning. That hourly rate continues to rise throughout your career, which doesn't necessarily happen in other jobs like admin and that type of thing. So you've got that bit to look forward to. So payments or variations to the contract, always important, because I can guarantee you no job ever runs exactly the way you thought it was going to from the beginning. So what is the agreement with your client? For instance, let me think of a good one here. So we were just building the house, and halfway through the contract, this is really a silly one now, I'm trying to think of one on the fly, but, the wife decides she's pregnant again and then I need an extra bedroom on the house, What do you do? Are you going to keep the same fees for you? But of course the cost of the house is going up, but are your fees going up if there's a variation? If the client changes their mind, is there going to be some fees in there for your variation? Because,
But like when you said, you're going with this per meter square, so obviously they're going to put an extra room.
Yeah, the extra cost of the construction, and your client, I guarantee you, will readily accept that. They know the minute they ask you for that extra bedroom that the cost of the building's going up. But are they going to pay you more because often they think, well, I've paid you to design a house. What does it matter if it's 3 or 4 bedroom? You're just doing a drawing. Yeah, I feel so sorry for the builder because he has to build more bricks for you. Yeah, you're just doing a drawing. It doesn't make any difference. Not an extra sheet in your set or anything, be careful on that, and do put in some clauses always in your contract about what happens if client changes their mind. Sometimes we make contracts where we go, for concept design stage, we'd say we'll have 3 meetings. So my standard is I'll have 3 meetings with you, and in between each meeting, you allow some time to refine the design. But after that 3rd meeting, you either agree, or if you've got a client who still can't make up their mind what they want and they'd like you to keep drawing forever and presenting them with a new design every week, they start having to pay an hourly rate after that or something like that. Yeah. Those are the kind of clauses you kind of need in that contract to prevent yourself just being absolutely, used and just being brought in and out and going, oh, we could tweak this, or look, and then the next week, because you've changed the floor plan to suit what their needs, last week they get, no, I don't really like that now. That looks like, the corridor is too narrow now. I actually think I need it wider. Maybe we should go back to the first version. So 3 times, 3 strikes, starting to pay me more. You'd be amazed how quickly clients can make up their mind when they have to start paying you by the hour to make changes. But it's like any industry, People will, keep going with a design service until they have to start paying more for it.
I used to give people 2 hours.
2 hours?
Yeah, to design a single piece of furniture. So
right.
Couch, I'd go in and measure their house for them and decide how big they need the couch.
Yeah.
This is all custom stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
2 hours to pick materials, how many cushions,
yeah.
Kind of crap.
Because it can go on forever.
Absolutely.
We can just go on and on.
2 hours was worth it in how much, we recouped that easily.
Yeah.
But after that, 15-minute blocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they wanted to see me in the shop, you can make an appointment.
Make an appointment, come in and see you. Yeah. Yeah, because you remember as a draftsperson, your time is money. Time. That's what you're giving to people is your time. So you do have to be careful about how much you're actually giving out. This is what I mean. I think, especially you guys starting out, you do start out very enthusiastically, and you really want to please your client, and you really want to give them the best design every single time. And of course, that's what we all strive for. But there's the balance of that is time and money. And that's every industry is the same. So that's the other part of the contract, just having some variations in there. So there's some notes there. You've got a copy of this. You can read through them. But this is just, as I said, a generic document. So the contract of engagement is the same thing, really. Sorry, what was that? What do they call this? Part of the contract of engagement. Same thing. All the same. So it's just a 3rd part to it there, and really, again, that's just details again too. I think by the owner they mean who owns the land here. The builder, if known, quite regularly the builder is not even heard of at the beginning of a project. Yeah. So often you won't even know who that is. Yeah. The project type, the project budget is always a good piece of information to get. The actual project address, so not to be confused with the client's address. The project address is where the building is at. What's the lot number? Where do we go to site? But the client address is where do I send my bill to? Because you can't send bills to a vacant lot, and they won't get paid. neither will you. So please do have an address that's an actual
Do you
address.
have like a down payment first?
No, not generally.
There's something here that says
Yep.
a positive, blah, blah.
You can. It depends on the company. Most services companies, so I suppose we could compare ourselves a bit to, I don't know, if you went to a lawyer, you don't really have to give him a down payment. He's probably just going to bill you for his hours at the end of the session that you go to see, or I don't know.
They've got to request 50%.
But Dabsco are different because that's a product. So we're not a product. I know we hand over actual drawings, but we're a service industry. We're providing a professional service. We don't actually physically bring something to the site. We don't deliver the blocks there,
So Kalani and all those don't require a down payment?
Oh, they would. Absolutely. Builders may require a down payment. I think they do.
Yeah.
No, actually, builders usually work in stage payments, progress payments. So you don't pay your builder until there's been some activity on site. Generally, the way it works.
They don't progress until you pay for that bit that's done.
Yeah, and that's very much part of a builder's contract is about stage payments, and that's all linked into the banking system as well. So if you go and get a mortgage for your house, the bank doesn't, drop 300,000 into your bank account to let you go off to Harvey Norman, because a lot of people would. What they do is and this is part of a project manager's role as well, during the construction stage, and we've kind of jumped forward from design here to construction, but during the construction stage, as a client representative, you would often go to site to see what the progress was on site, and so you'd make a note, you're saying like, I don't know, the house is up to, all the block work is finished, but the only window frames have been installed, no glazing, so you're estimating at what stage the house is at, and then you might go back and approve the progress payment for that stage. Yeah, so then you would advise your client, yes, please pay the builder 80,000, on such a date at the end of the month. So that's how that works. And then the banks often don't release the mortgage money, only in stages as well, to go to the builder, because the bank doesn't want people to, if you go out and got a loan of I don't know, 300,000 to build a house worth 300,000. Like, remember, the bank keep the deeds of that house. So they want to make sure that there's $3,000 worth of work happened on that site before they've paid out all the 300,000. Because if you go broke in the middle of the process, as a client, if you go broke and the house is only worth 150,000, but you've been silly enough to give the builder, all the money, there's issues there. The bank can't. They want to repossess a whole house. They don't want to repossess half a house. So there's lots of legal ties up with the bank in that regard as well.
But it's also interest. You don't want to pay interest.
Yeah, you don't want to be drawing down. Yeah.
While you're building the house.
You don't pay the full interest only if you've only spent 100,000.
Yeah. So we're pretty lucky in the Northern Territory. We have HFBC. I think is the name of the insurance here, that it's compulsory that you take it out at the time of the building permit. The certifier won't issue you a building permit until you've taken out the HFBC insurance. But people think that insurance covers them for building defects and, things that the builder might do wrong. It doesn't. The only thing it covers you for is the builder going bankrupt. But it's to protect the everyday mums and dads who are out there buying houses, most expensive thing they'll ever buy, and they're dealing with this huge money, and it would ruin them if they lost it all. So there's HFBC insurance for that purpose, and it's only because, if you've given the builder 150,000 and he goes bust and you've got half a house built, and it's always a nightmare if that happens for the clients. So we do have insurance policies in place now, but that's only happened in the last 10 years, I would think. I think before that, there were some clients that got caught out pretty majorly in the territory, so it's pretty nasty if that happens. So that's basically the client. Like, there's some more information there, local government, town planning precinct. Like, these are all sort of preliminary information. To be honest, I don't go too much into doing lots of site investigation until the contract's actually in place. Just going to have to be a bit quieter. Let me just stop my recording for a second. Okay, so we're going to have a look down at this form too. So these are a bit of an appendix onto it with some more information that you can have I certainly wouldn't go into taking huge amounts of detail, but this is just a summary sheet that you can use for the client brief. You know, what have they told you? And we looked a little bit at this in 4001, you know, what is the client's expectations, you know, space requirements, budget requirements, building style. What did they tell you is the initial brief. The scope of work, so will I have to visit the site? Will it be a full site analysis? Is there design development? Do I need to do a sustainability assessment? Will that be the job of the draft person, or will that be the job of an external consultant? So we do have sustainability assessors in the Northern Territory, but sometimes the draft people also do some of that assessment themselves. It's quite common that the same person would do both. We have presentation drawings, so we're talking about concept, design stage, the town planning application, the working construction drawings. So then we've got structural drawings. So sometimes as a draft person, especially when we're just dealing with a single dwelling, this draft person may do the set of structural drawings too. You can't sign off on them, so you do need a section 40 for design to apply for your building permit, and that has to be signed by a structural engineer who's registered in the Northern Territory. But quite often when you're doing the drawings for a house, you might do a slab plan and a roof plan as part of that documentation set. Send them to the structural engineer. He might write some notes on there and change some sizes of footings and give you a bit of a markup and send it back to you. And as the draft person, you just do that up, and then he's happy to stamp that set of drawings as the structural set. The client usually. So any company I've ever worked for, we get our clients to directly employ the other sub-consultants. So I worked most of my life in Darwin for a multidisciplinary engineering company, which was quite good because we had most of those people in the office. So when I did a fee proposal, I would be putting in for the building certifier and the structural engineer, you know, maybe some stormwater design from the hydraulics engineer as well in that set. So it was really good to go to a company that, you know, has all of those. The clients really like that because they're just dealing with one company. But if you do need to hire external consultants, then it can be either. It can be an agreement that the client is going to pay the architectural firm, you know, all of the sub-consultant fees. But what happens for a company is all that has to go through their books then, and then they have to subcontract out to the other external consultants, and most companies don't like doing that because you take a responsibility for their work at that point. So it's better if it just goes straight to the subconsultant. And often you'll just say something like, oh, I know you know, a structural engineer, I do a lot of work with him, can highly recommend, you know, whoever, Tim up the road, and he'll do your structural engineering for you. And most clients will be happy to go with your recommendation on those sorts of things. So when you do start working in the industry, you'll either be working with a company and you'll get to know a lot of the other people in their preferred design team, or if you're working for yourself and you're just a one-man band, you kind of need to make some contacts and set up your own little design team or people that you give referrals to. So you got hydraulics design, so hydraulics meaning water. Quite often for a dwelling, the hydraulics design will involve the plumber drawing over your floor plan. It's quite often hand drawing. But you know, you can go to a hydraulics engineer, but that will cost you more money and he'll do up a drawing for you. You have joinery design drawings. My husband is a cabinet maker joiner. He does all the drafting and design work for people's kitchens and walk-in wardrobes and you know, bedroom wardrobes and all sorts of joinery. And he has exactly the same complaint, that people don't just put any value on the design work whatsoever. You know, they're happy to pay for the actual cabinets, but not for the design. You know, people don't see the time it takes in the detailed design. And of course, protecting your drawings is another thing in here. So, you know, certainly my husband's been the victim of doing up lots of design drawings, and people take them to the next cabinet maker and get a better price, and that's who they employ. That happens every day of the week. So do protect your drawings. Never, ever, ever issue DWG files, drawing files from CAD. They can be just given to the next draft person, and they'll be only too delighted to take them because they don't have half the drawing work to do. and they can edit them and they can do whatever they want. Always issue in PDF. Now, we just discovered the other day, didn't we, that PDFs can be imported into CAD now in 2017, and they've got all the layers and everything in there, so that's not quite as foolproof as it used to be, but certainly don't. And you can issue PDF files with password protection on them. So maybe that's where we have to go next. I don't know. But that was always the rule in any drawing office I ever was working in. You never ever give anyone else the CAD files. CAD files are the property of the office or the draft person, and you don't issue them. The only time you issue a DWG file is if you're issuing it to another consultant who's working on your design team, who may need that information for their drawings, but you don't issue them to clients and you don't issue them to anyone else. So you might have mechanical services. Look at it in terms of dwelling house. You'll never have mechanical services. We just split system air conditioning. But mechanical design drawings come into it when you've got commercial buildings like this, where you've got ductwork and everything going everywhere, and you've got a whole set of drawings there. Specifications and schedules. So often, again, not typical for a dwelling house. We usually just put lots of notes on the drawings in text about what we want, especially in terms of NCC compliance. And then certainly the final sheet of the drawing set is often just a notes sheet with lots of instruction on there and reference to Australian standards and the quality of work and what's expected from the builder. But it does form part of the documentation. And it certainly forms part of the tender documents if you were getting a price. So remembering that when you put that entire document set together and it's stamped by the building certifier, you've got your building permit based on this particular set of documentation, the contract with the builder is not, you will build me a house on this lot. The contract is that set of drawings. It's every single piece of text, every dimension line, every line that you've drawn on the drawings. That's what the contract is with the builder. That's what he's agreeing to build for that amount of money. And the specification and the schedules that are included in that drawing set, or maybe in a separate document, are also part of the contract with the builder. Right, so I've heard some really funny stories, over the years, but one guy I know asked me to come around to see his house, and he'd got the builder in. He'd got a draft person to do limited set of drawings, and this is a danger of our trade. So the client doesn't want to pay a whole lot for the drawings, doesn't want to pay for a full set of working drawings. They just want to get a concept design, and then they'll go to a builder with the concept design, okay? And then they'll agree a price with the builder to build what's on those drawings. But what's on those drawings is fairly open to interpretation, because it's not, in accordance with NCC, and it's not, it doesn't have all the notes on there, it doesn't have all the dimensions in particular on there, it doesn't, it's just a schematic concept drawing. And the builder has lots of decisions to make, but then that leaves the builder in very much a controlled situation, because the builder gets to choose lots of things about the finishes and lots of things about. But I went to this guy's house, and the builder had decided. Originally, he was building a veranda extension on the back of his house, and the roof flew up over the house like this. I forget which way the pitch went, but if the house was just something like this, and then the veranda roof was supposed to come off like this, okay, the veranda's down like that, and then they were supposed to come up with another piece of structure up over here. It actually started connected into the external wall like that, and this was supposed to be like a breezeway through here. But when the builder got to site, that was way too complex for the builder to do, because this was really hard, and it is really hard to build some structure on top of another structure. And so what the builder had done was came off the external wall with these really ugly pieces of metal like this, and he hadn't decided that roof was too high, and he actually brought the roof in like this and got rid of all of that. But there was no real detail on the original drawings. There was enough, maybe just about to get a building permit. There was levels on it, and yeah, so that's what he ended up with a roof that did that. Pretty bog standard, fly in underneath the roof, sort of veranda line. And we asked me to go around and have a look, and I really don't know how they've managed to do this, because that should trigger a new building permit, you know, at the very least, you know, because it doesn't, if you've got a set of drawings with the other roof built on it, and it's stamped and it's got a building permit, then how does the certifier justify coming out and inspecting that and saying, oh yeah, it's the same as what's on the drawings? It's totally not the same as what's on the drawings. But often...
So if you give them a partial drawing, the building certifier can still stamp on that?
No, not really. Now, what happens I suppose I'd go back a step here. What happens in a lot of cases is that the builder has taken over a lot of this process in a lot of cases. So the builder has someone employed for him who's a draft person, and he also employs the structural engineer, and he also employs the building certifier. Now, if you go to that builder, how much control do you think you have over the design?
None.
It's all underneath the builder's control. He's got all of the professionals working for him.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference as a client in being a client who's commissioning a design with your own design team, who are employed by you and who are representing you as the client, and then going to a builder with that set of documents and getting a tender price on it. Whereas the alternative is to go directly to a builder, like, can you build me a house? And this is what most of our house builders are doing. And you say, yes, I'm going to look after all the documents. You don't have to worry about anything. You just buy in this house for $320,000. That's it. That's all you have to sign on the line there, $320, which takes a lot of risk out of it for people. But at the same time, they can, for instance, like this, the builder has, what he's done is he's rang the certifier and said, this isn't working out for me. Can you come down and have a look? And let's agree how to change the structure around here. And the certifier, because he works for the builder and gets paid by the builder, has agreed to everything the builder wants to do. It's probably still compliant with the NCC, it has to be, but it's not, at no point in this was the client ever consulted that the changes were going to be made, they were just built. Yeah, so it's very difficult, it's very, very difficult, but I think there is certainly, and there's an ongoing case there, because this contract was signed on one set of documents, and then what was actually produced is a different set, so there are some legal ramifications happening on that particular case, but it does happen all the time. Now, it's a fine line between changes that must happen on site, because sometimes when we go to dig, it's the earth, and we don't really know what we're going to find, and we hit rock, or we don't hit rock, and we don't hit anything, and we have to dig further, and there's variations to the builder's contract. But the correct process is that the client is consulted. Often, if you're the project manager and you're representing the client, you'll be consulted. The variation will be discussed and agreed, and a price will also be agreed for the variation.
It's also amazing what people put up with if they're kept in the loop, though.
Oh yeah, people will, yeah.
You call people straight away and say,
Yeah.
the factory's out of that material.
Yeah.
For argument's sake. Thanks so much for letting me know. How much longer is it going to take?
Yeah.
Sorry, it'll take another 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
If you try and hide it from them, and then 3 weeks later...
Yeah, where's my sofa? Yeah. Yeah, no, always be upfront with your client. I would always say that you just have to keep them informed. If you, certainly in the position, if clients come to you and you're doing the work for them, it's like they're your child. You're looking after them. You know, you have to look after them, and you have to keep them informed. I suppose I've always worked on the client side and the client-based project management, and you know, so I would be the person, I suppose, standing up to the builder for the client, you know, and being their representation there, and just saying to the builder, no, you can't, that's non-negotiable, that's staying in the design, you're not changing that, you know, because from the builder's perspective, he just wants to keep the cost down, you know, because every time not because he wants to give money back to the client, he wants to keep the cost down so his profit margin stays where it is. So, yeah, very rarely does a builder come to the client or you as the client's rep with a variation that's a reduction in price. I don't think I've ever seen it happening. You know, I've certainly negotiated it to happen a few times, but yeah, and it's certainly if a builder is suggesting an alternative method of doing something, I have no issues with that whatsoever. And they love to suggest those alternative methods. They absolutely hate when you say to them, so is that a cost reduction? And they don't like that. They don't want to respond to that whatsoever, you know. And it was funny. I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago and there was a couple of builders there and there was a couple of certifiers there, and there was a discussion going on about kind of this topic, and it seemingly at the moment I suppose the structure of the documents say that the owner has to be informed if there's a change to the building permit. Well, I don't always see this happening, but seemingly that's in NT governance documents, that's the situation at the minute. And they wanted a change to that. The builders were pushing that we don't have to tell the owners if there's going to be a change to the building permit. We only have to tell the certifier. And so I did say at that meeting, I said, because they said, so often the owners are not in Darwin and they're often out of town and it's not easy, the concrete truck is on the way and we have to make a change to the foundation and we can't contact the owner and this is a bit onerous that we have to contact the owner to get this signed off. And I said, I bet you'd find the owner really fast if it was a variation to the contract, though, and you wanted to get them to sign that, the foundation was costing 20,000 extra, and so they all stayed very quiet after that comment. They just said, we put you, so they can find the owners very quickly when they want extra money, but not very quickly when it's something to do with governance. So. Referral agency approvals, I have no idea what that's referring to. Building approval lodgement, so that's to do with our certification project. The preparation of tender documents, so tendering is a whole process in itself. So we get to that stage of working drawings, the documentation is absolutely finalised. There's no reason, so there's always this argument of tender documents versus working documents. They should actually be one of the same set of documents. You shouldn't have a set of documents going out for a tender. So do we know what tender is? So tender basically means bidding. Yeah, it's so you're comparing apples with apples. So if you three are the builders, I'm going to give you the same set of plans, use the same set of plans, use the same set of plans, and it's actually a really legal and confidential type of process. So I can't tell you that Brigitte is pricing, and I can't tell either of you two that Sharon's pricing. It's confidential, so when you're managing that type of process, you have to be very, very careful about what you're saying publicly. And so you issue the tender documents at the same time, on the same date. Everybody has to have the prices in on the same time, on the same date. If you miss the tender cutoff, you don't get to put in a late price. Why do you think that is?
Because then they can find out.
Because if you two have to give me your plans on your price on Tuesday, and he doesn't have to give me his price till Thursday, I could get your two prices in on Tuesday and tell him how much you've put in, and then he can drop his price and undercut you by Thursday. So, we have to be a very delicate process. So, when I used to work in Aaron Consult, we would have a locked tender box out in the front, out at reception, and it was literally a big hinged box with a big padlock on it, and it stayed locked until 2 p.m. on Wednesday the 13th, and then the director would always be there when you unlocked the box. He always wanted to make sure the process was never questioned, and we'd take all the envelopes into the conference room and close the door and open them all. There was always more than two of us in there at the same time as well, and we'd all have to sign. Then we'd write out the list of prices and we'd all sign the document, and so there was no favoritism going on.
Yeah, you can't. One thing off this way, you can't have any friends or family that's working in certain departments of things, because some tenders are actually, it's all conflict of interest. They actually have to do a background check.
Yeah.
Can't work on that particular.
So conflict of interest, you can have conflict of interest. I suppose the idea of conflict of interest is that you declare it as a conflict. You're upfront about it. Yeah, and then probably in an office, you would probably just be excluded from that particular tender process, or the day. It's only the day of the opening as well, like it's not necessarily. So the other thing that happens in the tender process as well is, so again, let's say you three are tendering, and the tender process often takes 3 or 4 weeks, because you've got to allow these builders time to go off and get their prices together. I often think the builders have a huge job to do in a matter of a couple of weeks to price up a whole building. And procurement process. So, if Brigitte rings me and says, I'm a bit confused about detail on, drawing sheet 112, can you confirm to me if that's a metal flashing or a, timber fascia board you're putting on there? It doesn't tell me, or there's something in the documents that you're not understanding. When I can't respond to you, I can take your question, and when I respond to that question, I have to respond to all tenderers.
Yeah.
Everybody must receive exactly the same information. Can't give one piece of information to one and not the other.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's fine, that's great.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite a good process. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we don't really need to think about too much about the tenant, but it's kind of, I quite like this unit because it gives me a chance to give you good general information about how all of these things work. Contract administration basically means that you are the person who's looking after the contract and the terms of the contract.
Once the tender is finalised and you get all the documentation from the builders, do you then submit that to the client and say, look, these are the 3
Yeah,
builders,
yeah.
which one do you prefer?
Yeah, we do. They literally bring the client in and you make a presentation to them and you say these are the prices that have come in. Quite often on bigger projects we would also get a price from a quantity surveyor.
Yeah.
So that's like a verification price. So we don't want to see the 3 of you getting together over dinner and deciding that you're going to hike up by 100,000 everyone.
Yeah.
And probably happens quite more regularly than we would want to know. But I'm kind of hoping that this bit of downturn in the Darwin economy is actually going to stop that happening. People are trying to win jobs and win them at a fair price. So, but that's what they get in that QS. Because the QS, they literally count bricks and count meters squared of concrete and count how many bolts are going to be used or how many screw fixtures are going to be on the roof, and they literally get a price for them in the current rates and then they add them all together and give you the current rates for the cost of what that building should come in at. And then they allow about 15% contingency on top of that. Do we know what contingency is?
Leeway.
Yeah, it's the FAT. So you get your final price by adding up all of your materials and all of your labour costs and anything that's going to cost you to put something together, and then you add a percentage on top of that because usually something is not the price that you thought it was going to be, or it takes longer to build and you have more labour costs, so that's just known as contingency in terms of building, and you add it in. And when you're doing some drafting and you're working out your own fees, I would think that you probably should add some contingency in too. We generally don't tend to call it contingency, but you want to put a little bit of fat on there as well, So how many hours are you going to take? Well, if the client rings you up one day and keeps you on the phone for an hour, there's an hour that you didn't actually add into drafting time, or it took away from your drafting time and you need to add it on. So, you really need to think about your time.
So once the tender's on the call, could you then sway the client to say, look, I'll know that the pricing is really low on this one, and you might want to go at the lower end of the spectrum, but I suggest that you should go at this one.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. We used to look at this in a lot more detail. When I worked in Ireland, there used to be, we used to value different parameters, so we would value a shorter contract. So, the time, because the builder has to put in his timeline a part of the tender document, so you have a completion date. And so we often in Ireland, I used to see contracts awarded more on completion date than it was on the price. If a builder is way underpriced, under where everyone else is or under where the QS is, we actually have an onus on us to bring in the builder and talk to him about that, because he's probably missed something quite major. And it's nobody wants you might think it's really good. You get this really low price and you go, oh, we're on it, we're going to get the building done cheaper and clients all happy, and the builder gets halfway through the building and realizes that he hasn't budgeted for some huge part of the component of the building, and he's coming back looking for a whopping variation at that point. You're already halfway through the building. You're going to have to pay it, or he doesn't really bear the cost in that situation. When those sorts of situations have gone to court, they've usually favoured with the builder, even though it was his mistake in the first place to leave it out. So we don't like to get into those situations. Nobody wants the builder going broke. We don't want to put the builder broke either, that's not a good situation for anyone. Somebody else, you're going to have to get a new builder in to finish the building.
Are you sure this is the final price?
Yeah,
okay.
Just said we need to question, we've compared it against QS, or we've had a QS look at it, and we think you may have missed something, and you might just go through the big items and see where, maybe say, go and have a look at your price again. That's not the same thing as telling him what the other people are coming in at. That's just
Yeah,
fair
of course,
warning
yeah.
of whether or not he's actually quoted what he should have quoted for.
Yeah.
The tender process has lots of complexities to it.
Yeah.
And it's really actually interesting area, and it's quite an exciting time in the office. You know, you probably put months and months into putting this documentation set together, and you know, you're starting to get the builder on board, and everything's looking like it's going to site, and you've got priced in for the job, and clients are usually really happy at the point that their building's moving forward. It's about to go to site, and it's a really, really exciting time in the project. Yeah. Where are we? Well, let's take a break. My voice is going to go on me again. Let's take 15. We'll come back to it afterwards. Oh, is there? Alrighty. So, before the break there, we were just talking about the contract form. The next part of that there are other consultants that might be engaged. And this is really just to sort of help you out at the beginning of the project. Who else might you need on the project? And there's a list of other consultants there. We won't go through them all, but you know, it's just to remind you that you might need them. And then on this side, there's just other information required. Again, it's just like another checklist, looking at the different services that you might have. Protection orders, heritage, we've done lots of that lately. We certainly don't need to go through that list again. And then this variation schedule is sort of a description of the work for variations, so you can keep a track of that. And it's just you know, a template file really. And then I don't really think I need to go through any of this. You can have a look through this form yourselves. It's just, you know, site analysis checklist, very similar to what we looked at the other day out on site. They're just forms that can help you. There's a nice graph paper to bring them to you on site if you wanted, and a pre-designed checklist of other things you might need. We've used lots of these checklists. We've used some of them in 001 and 2 and 3, and we've also used some in site surveying as well. So record of verbal advice that you give to your client. I don't think anyone really does that. I've never done it. We often do record conversations with our clients though. If your client comes in for a meeting, you might record it in the form of just taking minutes of the meeting. Certainly would take some notes. I don't know, it's more casual though, I suppose, in most design offices. Like, if a client came in for a meeting, I would most likely write lots of notes on the drawing. See you next week. On the drawing as we're discussing them, you know, and just writing the job number and the date, and you know, maybe whoever was at the meeting, I might write it at the top of the drawing, and then that just goes into the file. It's a record of the meeting. We don't need to be always completely formal because it takes too much time. By the time you come out of the meeting, which probably lasted an hour, and then type up the minutes, that's another hour. You know, some clients won't pay for all that, you know, unless it's a very big job where you really need to be very official. That sort of practice doesn't happen. It happens though, for instance, on bigger jobs, for instance, like big projects I've worked on, Palmerston Hospital project. You have a design team meeting every week, and the design team meetings for those kind of projects can go on for 4 hours. They're huge, mammoth meetings. So there would be a dedicated person in there taking minutes, and they would be issued to everybody who attended the meeting then after, you know, within a day or two of the meeting. So you have to keep records of decisions made at meetings like that. And they often come in not just meeting minutes, but you often have the items that are discussed and then actions arising out of each item, because design team meetings, like we've discussed before the break, it's all about moving the project forward. What's going to be done by next week? That's the attitude always, you know, not what was done last week. We never think about what was done last week in terms of buildings. It's always what are we going to do next week? What stage are we going to be at by the end of next week? So actions arising and dates when, you know, you need to send me your drawings by next Friday. Action, David to send drawings by, you know. And then the next week meeting, David, did you send those drawings? Yeah, and that's exactly what will happen. You know, you're on a deadline always. We deal in deadlines all the time in this job. Friday is a really busy day in design offices. Usually deadlines are lunchtime Friday if you're lucky, or close of business Friday if you're unlucky, and you spend your entire Friday afternoon freaking out that you're not going to have the drawings ready by 4 p.m. and that you're going to have to work late on Friday night, which is even worse. Yeah, Friday is usually the day that's put down for issuing of drawings. COB. I remember when I came to Australia first, I went, what is COB? What is this cob? Close of business. Close of business for those who didn't grow up in Australia. COB. Okay? Australians love to abbreviate everything. Nicole, Andy, Fevin, you guys are all going to learn this. Very, very well. And there's abbreviations for everything, and every industry seems to have a whole set of them that you have to learn. And yeah, COB got me for a long time. Oh, there was another one. What was the other one? Oh, I don't know.
What did you think COB was?
No idea.
Corn.
No idea. Yeah, corn. That's what COB was worth to me before that.
Wasn't it, Andrew was saying, like, the engineer sign? What was it?
Stat.
Stat, yeah.
I don't know what stat's for, but yeah, that's the other one. Stat.
So if you
Yeah.
if you,
I think it must be short for statutory declaration or something. I don't know.
but if you like kind of change something and then you like a reverse,
Yeah.
is that right?
Yeah. So stat means I didn't mean to scribble that out, or I
Yeah.
didn't mean to put a mark on that.
Yeah.
Stat means just leave it as it is. Yeah. Survey testing, look, we're not going to go through all of these. These are just like a wealth of forms that are produced by the Building Designers Association, so I don't need to go through the whole lot of them. All right, let's do a little bit of brainstorming. Keep everyone awake for the last half an hour. Why? If I like you awake. Form that I was looking for. Alrighty. Why do you think we might need a file naming convention? Well, this is the very first question. You guys are going to answer it yourselves.
Convention.
So convention just means a system. Why do we need a file naming system in an office? Why would you need a file naming system? I'm going to turn off this computer. It's driving me a bit nuts all day.
Make things easier to find.
Yeah. Yeah. Easy to find. Come on, guys. You working in an office, you're all working on the same project.
Yep.
Why would you need a file naming system?
Won't get confused.
Just for organisation, I would say.
Organisation, yeah. Organisation. What was your 1-1?
To not get confused with other projects.
Yeah, so reduce confusion.
It doesn't mean that we can update our assessment sheet.
Yeah, no, we're looking at this. Yeah, we're looking at this. Yeah.
Keep up to date timeline.
About it, really, isn't it? Easy to find. Gosh, I forgot the D. Easy to find. Easy to locate. So you know if you've got a system of where to find your files. Think about what we've been doing in CAD when we've been looking for our files. How easy is it for you guys to find your template now? Have you done it a couple of times? It just opens up automatically. Yeah, well, that's true. That's CAD doing you a favour there. But, you know, how easy is it for you to find, you know, the block of a WC right now? Yeah, because you know exactly where it is. But if you don't, and you're drawing, and you're in a drawing, and you don't know where your files are, it just wastes so much time during the day. You really, really do need to do this. So I suppose we really want to think about, when we want to think about naming files in an office scenario, we want to think about consistency, don't we? We want to be doing the same thing again and again. We don't want to be naming them one day and a different way the next day. Because if we start doing that, when we come back in, a month's time, we're going to not remember what our file was called. Also, if you lose your files, most computers have a really good search function these days. You can just, it's easy then to know what that file would have been called, so you know that it starts with the job number and then you know it goes on to the drawing number. You can type that in and do a search on your computer if you've lost the file. So I suppose easy to find, locate for organization. And for organization, I would say, sharing of files. Reduces confusion within an office. And I suppose it's clear. Reduced confusion just means it's very clear to everybody working there that how they should name their files. They don't have to really think about it. It certainly increases efficiency because of the time saving in locating and finding your file. I'm sorry?
It can be esoteric as well. So
Explain that a bit more.
where only we know what we're talking about. So only we call it CCP,
Yeah.
PDN,
Yeah.
and no dude can just walk in here and go, oh, that's
That file. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Very true. Yeah. So I suppose, like the other thing, once we think about drawings, your client would be calling you up. It's a real form of communication, the job number, because it's written on your drawings. So anyone can be bringing you up. A consultant can be bringing you up. The builder can be bringing you up. The client can be bringing you up. And very quickly on the phone, you can just say, what's the job number for that? And, immediately you can be on your screen, getting into the job number, bringing up a drawing on your screen really, really quickly. He's not trying to tell you a lot number or an address or, any of these other things that you're still kind of sitting there going, I have no idea what job he's talking about, You've just straight into where you need to be. All right. Here's one further down that we might have a look at. Save. What's meant by save?
When you save over top of something, you press save. Or when you save over top of an existing file, save as when you create a new file name.
Say that again?
NAE.
Sorry, my brain's gone to that. I should be listening better.
You save over top of the existing file.
Yeah.
But when you go save as, you have an option to create a new file.
A new file, yeah. And give it a new name, perhaps. Rename it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So saving is updating an existing file, shall we say?
Mm-hmm. 4.
Saving. So with saving, we can save as a new file. New file. And we can apply a new name. What else can you do other than naming it? You do a save as.
Save and change format.
Format as in file extension?
Yeah.
Yeah, change format, yeah. File name, format. What else can you do when you do a save as?
Located in a different part of the file.
Perfect answer. Locate in a different location. Change location. How do you review duplicate files? And what do you do if you would find duplicate files?
Sure, that's what that means by how do you review them? See them. There's two files named the same thing.
If you find
So you, what are you doing then? If you find two files named the same thing, you notice Or you compare the,
Question 5 is how do you review them?
yes,
I mean, am I supposed to go?
you kind of said it a second ago.
So you gotta look at when they were saved and the date.
Oh, sorry, question 5, no, I'm going down a little bit, because I have to do a little bit more work with you on some of these before we answer them. We'll just get through a few this evening that we can do quite simply. So, I'm going down to question 6, how do you review duplicate files?
Check the properties of it, for the date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recent date.
I would say when the last date was,
Yeah.
like, say,
It's going to be known the same thing.
Yeah, it could be in 2 different folders though.
Yeah, it's going to be named.
Yep.
Well, you got your date modified there as well. Gives you the most
I think
recent.
that's probably,
You already got this, let me take
check
this up.
the last saved date.
So that won't be a duplicate
But you won't be able to.
No, if you.
If you found 2 drawings though with the same job number, maybe perhaps in 2 different files, say you went into your file structure and one of them is just under the job number, the other one's in the CAD folder, but they've got the same name, immediately that should ring alarm bells with you.
Someone's
Because
copying.
somebody's saved it in the wrong place, and now how do you even know if that happens, that which one's the current one?
Properties.
Open it, and you could open it and check the drawing, but without having to do that, because that's the labour that we're trying to avoid having to do. You know, we're going to avoid trying to go in. Can you imagine going into AutoCAD of a really complex drawing and starting to look at every line and try and see? Like, it's hard enough in a Word document, you know, to find which one, if you've got 2 of them that are exactly the same, which one's my latest edit,
Yeah.
you know?
So
But
you
can you imagine trying to do that in a drawing?
You can right click and go into properties and to give you some
Does it give
information.
you like a log or not?
Please check the date and
Yeah, it gives you the like,
Or who saved it last?
you can,
I think it does give you who saved
Yeah.
it last and who's the owner of the file.
yeah, who saved it last,
So what would we compare? Date,
the date,
Date and the data.
date,
the file size.
the file size.
I don't understand how we're going to have 2 files named the same thing.
But if they were in 2 different folders, you could. So say somebody is working in CAD one day, and they're hitting save as they're working through the day, and you know at 3:45 they hit save and it's in CAD, and then you know somebody's on the phone to them at 4:25 and they still have to collect their child from childcare at 4:45, and the client's on the phone, and you're suddenly going file save, and you've put 5 files open, and quite by mistake you've hit file save as, and you've just saved it under the job number. Or worse still, you've saved it on a different job number. And the next day somebody else goes into the office and they find this file, this CAD file with the job number on it, but they know it's not in the right location. But they go to the right location and there's another one in there with the exact same name. Because you can have 2 files with the same name if they're in 2 different locations. It's not going to give you any alerts if you do that. How do you know which one was the last one used that day? How do you know which one's the last one that, you know, Brigitte worked on yesterday? She's out sick today. Date? Yeah, date. File size.
I think what, no.
Because if you add to it, the file size is going to increase.
But if you're like, obviously, yeah, but then you can't, it doesn't, file size doesn't really tell you much. Because instead of adding, they could have removed it.
Yeah, they could have. You could have purged the file just before you did that, and it might actually be smaller. So I wouldn't. Well, we can definitely use it as a comparison factor, the file size and the date. Yeah. But so you know, the other thing, like Sharon said, you might open it. You might like compare the content, but that's kind of last on the list. We don't really want to be getting to that point where we have to, you know, open 2 drawings side by side and start comparing the content. So if we did that, if that happened to you, so you've compared these duplicate files, what would you do with the 2 files?
You put it in the same folder and create a folder called superseded. And put what you think the old one is in the superseded.
In the
file.
superseded folder, so you could do that. You could put the older one. The older one is superseded.
Or like archive. archives, do you?
superseded.
But keep it, yeah.
You get the computer to check it, and if it makes, if there's any difference in it.
But you can't merge two documents.
You can't merge two documents together.
But you can have a superseded.
What if you don't want to keep two files? What if you just want one?
Well, then you,
Thank you, Kissy. Delete. Delete.
what do you call it when you open one document and then you save it as the other one that you're looking at?
Rewrite, override.
So, yeah, so you've opened one, you've got two, the same. You open one and you go save as, you click on that file, so then therefore, this other one, and normally it compares the two and says, do you want to replace this, or
Newer
this one
version, yeah.
has X amount of data.
Yeah, I don't think that works for DWG files, but it does definitely work for Word document. Yeah, and it'll ask you, do you want to, it's like an overwrite,
Yeah.
an overwrite. Yeah, you can put that in there too, an overwrite. These are all just very general office procedures that we just want to, not going to try and overthink it too much. They happen in every walk of life. If you're at home sorting out your photographs, you might find you have two photographs that are exactly the same. What do? You just clean it up a bit and you delete it, because we're always very conscious of this in drafting, because our file sizes are so large and we don't really want to be keeping we don't want to keep multiple copies because we don't want them to cause confusion, but we also don't want to keep multiple copies because of storage issues.
That's usually the job for the BIM manager, isn't it? Once they usually go through it and then they delete what files.
They may do. Yeah, and certainly before you would archive a job, so at the end of a job, when you're thinking about, the job's finished, you're not going to do any more work on it, you're archiving it. We all want to keep our digital files these days, but we don't want to be keeping huge digital files either. So you would certainly go in and do a bit of an audit and just keep most recent documents, the last documents that were worked on. Yeah.
More important to work yourself.
Even more and more.
Hiring a server.
Yes, you're not trying to hire a server to keep multiple copies of the same thing. You wouldn't do it if it was paper copies, so why would you do it when they're digital, But in regards to that too, the same thing applies to the paper copies as it does to the digital copies. At the end of a job, you might go through the paper file too and just keep the important things and get rid of what's not going to be ever referred to ever again. How do you, just speaking about that then, I suppose the next question is, how do you review outdated files, and what do you do if you find outdated files?
File them in archives.
That's exactly the way you do it.
Well, it's kind of the same. You would compare, you do this step again, comparing the date, the file size, and the content, and then you might, as one referred to earlier there, you might put it in a superseded folder, meaning that there's a later version. We're just going to keep it there for records in the superseded folder. Or you might delete it. So what is superseded?
Upgraded.
Just what we're talking about, because we've mentioned that word twice now, and I feel like we haven't.
No, it's like where the older versions of stuff is going in.
Yeah, it's like,
Superseded means that something else has come before it, or come after it, shall I say. So it's got it. There's a newer version of this available. It's not the latest. It's not the newest.
Like your daughter's going to supersede you.
You're
the older model.
That's a lovely, lovely thought to end with. Your daughter's going to supersede you.
Well, my son's going to supersede me one day.
We'll all be superseded one day. We'll all be superseded. And on that note, we'll just go home. Die slowly in the corner. So I suppose, the definition is to replace in something outdated.
Yeah.
Like you, Brigitte.
Yeah, exactly.
You're getting awful abused today, aren't you? With something newer. Or to make obsolete. Yeah?
Yeah.
Superseded. Make it obsolete. No longer required, I suppose.
For the best reason.
We'll be doing some examples. We'll be working through that. I just thought I wasn't going to work you so hard today, so I thought we'd just go through general. But you will. We will be looking at how to set up some file structures that deal with all of this, and how what's and difficult. But I just thought we'd go through some of the sort of general knowledge questions today. So I suppose this is a very general knowledge question. Why is it important to destruct unwanted, confidential or sensitive documents? I'm sure my son could answer this.
So the spies can't get 'em.
The spies can't get him. Rob this out. Does anybody need this? No? I'm going to go again. We're brainstorming. Oh, I'm on the board. Come on.
What did you say about the 60 again? What's the answer?
Outdated, not the latest, not current.
Come on, I'm not giving you the answers. You guys have to brainstorm. Oh yeah, go for it.
Obsolete.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Kind of like
that's
find
what I'm told.
reference, describe why.
Putting all the words. And then one word will supersede all the rest.
No, I mean, the answer to this, like, why it's important, like, we all know why it's important.
You have to just find the words to compose your answer.
To avoid something.
For protection.
What kind of information?
Whether
Come on, military man.
Intellectual.
You said it, you said it.
Intellectual or corporate.
Yeah.
So protecting,
Exactly the same as split.
How do we review identify? That was she meant,
Yeah, exactly the same.
I can't even spell anymore, my brain has gone so bad today.
That's the last
So
one.
the US military, with their hard drives, they
Yeah.
wipe them 8 times and then put them back into service.
Alright.
We wipe ours 36 times and then crush them and put them in concrete federal buildings.
Really?
When we hard copy.
With
Digital.
hard drive, digital hard drive.
Yeah.
Computers get wiped 36 times with magnet and
Interesting piece of information there.
crushed, put it in cement and put it into manufactured
So when you dig up the federal building, you might find World War I and World War II.
I don't think they had digital hard drives back then.
I would add another thing there, kind of
Yep.
to avoid, like,
That's what they tell us.
for your ideas to be, like, leaked and somebody kind of taking over. There's like a word for it.
To avoid, yeah, what was that? Nick helped you with the word.
Your word,
Intellectual.
is that what you're saying?
No, that's what David said.
Oh,
I don't know how to spell intellectual.
basically it's like your creation.
I did spell it.
your,
E-C-T-U-A-L, is that right?
and you don't want somebody
Intellectual.
to copy.
To plagiarize.
Yeah.
To plagiarize your work.
Yeah.
Would that be right? Is that summing it up for you?
Yeah.
There's another very military word that we could use here. How it happens when somebody takes something that's not theirs?
Compromise. Stealing.
Yeah, well, or they haven't permission to do it, maybe is the better.
Occupy. Isn't it like,
Steel.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
If I have, if you, say that again.
Oh, no, I'm gonna run. Sorry, I have to do it. Is this for number 10 or?
No, that's a 9.
9 still?
Yeah.
Unauthorized what?
The marking is complete.
Thank you so much. Bevan? So there's our 3 points. Anything else anybody wants to add? Protecting sensitive information
What
to
Peter-
avoid intellectual
What
theft?
Peter just said was to avoid plagiarism.
To avoid plagiarism? Jeez, guys, you give me all the words to spell today, aren't you? I can't spell plagiarism. And it's not a good start when it's started with a G.
So it's Plagia, RISM.
PLAGIS.
So PLAGIARISM.
Flaggy or on.
Oh my God, you gotta go again. PLAGIA. ISM.
RISM, R-I-S-M. Yeah.
No, there's an RI missing.
Oh my God.
Sorry, there's one RI missing, sorry. Don't worry, just write whatever you want.
Just say, to avoid copying. Just go, to avoid
To avoid copying.
We're gonna
Copying
start
data. All right, go again. PLAGIR.
Oh, just one person.
FM. Okay, that's it. Jeez. I give up, guys.
94.
Is it number 10? Is it possible to destruct unwanted, confidential, or sensitive hard copy documents?
Yeah.
How would you do that?
In a safe environmentally responsible way.
Yes, it is.
This,
In a safe and environmentally responsible way.
Shred them
You could shred them.
and give them to the gardener.
Oh, I don't know if we'd do that.
No, not the gardener.
I think we'd give it to the gardener in case somebody who did really want to.
There's companies that would actually destroy,
There are, you should mention them.
yeah.
So you can shred internally in your office, yeah? Guys, can you make sure that all your answers are identical? Can you please try and put some of your own words on these? This is why we're brainstorming. Or you could employ a dedicated business. And so what would that dedicated business have to provide you with?
Guarantee.
Yeah. Sometimes they can give you a certificate of destruction.
They could even provide you photos of your document going through the process, can't they?
You just get some bit of
What's that?
I was just saying, they could provide you with the process of
Yeah. So they usually give you a certificate to say that your documents have been securely shredded and disposed of. Yeah. So the next question then is talking about what is that certificate of destruction. And it is an official document, a certificate of destruction. And so, obviously you pay these companies a lot more than you're going to pay the normal bin collection guy to come around and dispose of your, unwanted paper. In these days we're all trying to recycle in our offices, and we have all these big bins, the big yellow bins that you see around the university for paper, and often drafting offices will have really large bins. But, if you, for instance, have drawings that are of, the local bank, and, all the corridor network in the back of the bank, and I certainly have worked on bank buildings before, but they are really confidential documents, I've worked on lots of jobs at Robinson Barracks as well, highly confidential documents that nobody wants them to be just floating around or, being found in just the bins at the back of the drafting office, or down in the basement. So some documents and some jobs you will have to be really, really careful of, and they are really sensitive documents in the office, and they do need to be shredded, or they need to be put in a locked bin. And then that bin is collected by one of these companies who will provide you with a certificate of destruction.
one of them is Shreddit.
Shreddit, that's an actual company, yeah, that you certainly can find them online and read up a little bit about what they do, and you can answer those questions. They're all fairly general knowledge questions about office procedures. So the office I used to work in, we actually don't know how it happened, but there was some of our drawings found on the Stuart Highway one day, and whether or not they blew out somebody's car window or whether or not they blew off the back of a recycling truck, but there was a client who wasn't very happy with their proposed building floating up and down the Stewart Highway.
Don't consult medical documents still on the road in Britain.
Oh, really?
Off the roof of some chick at the hospital's car.
Oh, no.
Transporting someone.
Yeah, yeah. So it has been known to happen, and like I certainly am a little bit aware. Like I used to bring home this because in a drafting office you do a lot of test printing, and sometimes the test prints are just brought into meetings so that everyone can talk about the drawings, or sometimes you just leave them on the director's desk and he's going to come back the next day with the markups are written on them, and then they're just rubbish by the end of the day. So I used to bring them home because, you know, drawings we usually print on one side on drawings. So I used to bring them home. My son would draw on the other side, you know, and there's still drawings floating around my house of buildings that were built, you know, I don't know how many years ago. So it's very, you know, it's easy to not do the right thing with drawings as well. This all sounds like, oh, I would never do that, but believe me, you will. You'll be in those situations, and you'll be, and you'll also be in social situations where people will ask you about current projects around Darwin. But you know, when you go to be employed by a lot of drafting offices, you do sign confidentiality agreement with them when you most of them do have it when you go into employment, or at the very least, there's a professional trust there that you're not going out, you know, blabbing around the pub on the weekend about who's doing what development and who's, you know, what is going to come up with for a planning application next week, because you never know, and especially in a small city like Darwin, you never know who's listening, and you never know who you're saying what to, who is going to repeat it to somebody else, who it falls back to the client, and suddenly you're in trouble because the boss has heard that you're out and about talking about your project a bit too much.
Even people in your office.
Sorry?
You'd have negative vetting, would you, to work on places like Robertson Barracks and banks?
Yeah, you have to. Yep.
But not everybody in your office would.
No, just the people on the project.
Print is a big one.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, in most drafting offices, there are usually really open plan. There's, you know, anyone can see what's on your desk. And to be fair, you have to drawings are big, and you have to lay them out. And it's not so easy to keep things confidential within the office. But there is definitely a sense of trust in the office that if you do pick up on something else, that you know, you're all part of a team. You're all bound by the same agreements with your clients. Whether it's formal or informal, it's a professionalism that you have to adopt.
Yeah, we had to, I worked in a job for the defence. We were to reconstruct the Garden Island Wharf structure, and they had to allocate one floor of the building for that.
Right, okay.
And no one can access that building except for the people with the pass.
Yeah, certainly.
So
yeah,
that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Working on that.
Yeah. No, these things are quite common, guys, and it's also just something you have to take upon yourself, you know, that you go, right, well, you know, I can talk about, you know, the lovely house I went to see last week. That's not going to bother anyone, but, you know, maybe I'm going to keep quiet about, you know, the new, you know, $50 million development out at Robbins Barracks because, you know, maybe Kim Wong-jong wants to hear about it or something. I don't know. So, yeah, and again, I suppose in these days of social media and things like that, just be careful about if you're ever posting online about, you know, try and just keep work out of that. It's nothing to do with where it should be, so just be careful that you don't get yourself into any bother. Guys, it's 3 minutes to 4. I've had a heck of a day. I think we're just going to leave it there. How did you guys go today? Who's banging? Right there, David. Go and run around the building, David.